Ohio. They're at an event called Cultivate. It's a major event for our industry. It's a huge deal. Everybody from across the country and across the world comes to it. It's very educational. You learn a lot. You hang out with other people that are interested in things with you. Lindsay was one of 3 people nominated for innovator. So that's really exciting. I think we find out tonight if she won. There's 3 people nominated. She had to go through the review process, write an essay, all this stuff. So we'll find out tonight. Hopefully good news, but we're very proud of her. Just to be nominated with 3 people is excellent. So today's class is a very broad topic. And when I started thinking about it, how to present it, how to get you guys really good information, it was just almost overwhelming, because keeping your landscapes healthy is just, and looking for all the stuff that can occur, might occur, does occur, it's huge. I mean, we could probably do a week seminar on it and not cover everything. So what I'm going to do is kind of hit the highlights. Feel free to ask me questions if you've got a burning question or something that I said didn't make sense, or you're just not sure. Feel free to ask a question. Maybe we're going to get something. So it's healthy landscapes, keeping your landscapes bug-free, disease-free. And in this environment, that is definitely a challenge. So how many of you are from areas other than Prescott? So gardening here, I'm sure a lot, whether you're coming from the Valley, California, the Midwest, it is very different in this high desert region, because we get cold in the wintertime. We get hot in the summertime. We are very dry. Usually our humidity is like 6% or less. Right now it's like at 30 and we're all like, oh my God. So we're very dry. So not a lot of humidity in our atmosphere to protect our plants from the sun. Plus we're at a mile high. So we're at a level up there where that sun, without that humidity, it's just beating down on us. And it's hot. So we have to take all these things into account when we're planting and taking care of our landscapes here. So one of the best things you can do for your landscape is actually think about your landscape. What part of town are you located in? Are you out in Dewey? Are you up in Country Club? Are you out in Williamson Valley? There's so many little environments here that are so different. Williamson Valley has the wind like no other there, and it just blows. Chino's kind of the same. You're out in Dewey, it's just really, really hot. Maybe you're up in Grim Creek and you don't get a lot of extra sun, but you get that really cold winter. So you've got to be really aware of what environment you want to plant in. And the other thing to be aware of is how much sun, which way is the house facing? Am I west? Am I east? Am I northeast? Do I get a lot of shade? Do I get a lot of sun? Because the best thing you can do for your landscape is put the right tree, shrub, plant in the right environment. So Japanese maples. I love Japanese maples. I think they're the most pretty little tree, and I can't grow them. Well, because I don't have the right environment. I don't have humidity. I don't have a good shady spot in my yard. I don't have a spot that doesn't get a lot of wind. So as much as I love that tree, I'm not going to put it in because I know it'll never be happy. So know your environment around your house, and then think about the plants that you want to put in. So that's where your garden professionals can be a huge help to you, because you may love a Japanese maple and you may really, really, really want it, but if you don't have the right environment, you're not going to be happy and the tree's not going to be happy. So let us find you something that would work. Maybe an Amer maple. They get about the same height and width. They still get that real pretty fall maple color. but they're like, give me the sun. I can take the sun. And they're fine with that. So finding the right plant for your environment is important as well. So, if you got a plant that's likes the heat, like lantana, likes the heat, loves the heat, wants a hot spot, but you live up in Groom Creek in the shade at 7,000 feet, is that lantana going to be happy? Not at all. So I would say the first part of keeping your yard healthy, having a good landscape, is know your environment and find the right plants for your environment. That is like 50% of it all right there, getting the right things. The second part is proper planting. So how many of you have dug in our soil? It's a bear. So some people are very, very lucky and they have some beautiful soils and they can dig and they're happy and they got topsoil. And the next person next door tries to go dig and they have nothing but rocks, caliche, hard soil. You try to put a shovel in it and it flings back in your face. So we can have really interesting soils around here, from very, very heavy clay, which you could, you get it wet, you pull it out, and you could sculpt things with it. It's that heavy a clay. Some people have really nice sandy soil or granity soil, depending on where you live, and you go to water something, the water just goes whoosh. You're like, I know I watered that. Where's the water? It's just gone. Some very, very lucky people have loamy soil, which is a great light soil that's really easy to dig in, holds the moisture. Some very, very few people are lucky and they have that here. But we also have a very strong layer of caliche, which runs in our soils. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. So caliche is a really hard pack. It almost looks like cement. When you've hit it, you're digging along, and all of a sudden, bam, and you've hit this really hard layer of soil. And that is a bear, but you got to either dig past it or you pick a different spot, because if you hit a caliche layer and you don't move past it, you've basically created a bathtub. And there's very few plants that want to be in the bathtub. So we've got to be aware of your soil type. Do I have clay? Do I have caliche? Do I have loam? Do I have sandy? And then, of course, whatever soil you have, you want to amend it. So if you're planting a tree, a shrub, a perennial, anything going into the ground, you definitely want to amend that soil. Because if you try to plant just in hard, bare soil, you're going to give your tree or shrub a very rough start. And if you give a tree or shrub a very rough start, it's very much prone to disease and other things in the yard. So we always say amend your soil. So you're going to take your hole, whatever you're planting. I'm planting this. So that's a 2-gallon pot. If I was going to dig my hole, I want my hole twice the width of the pot. And you want it a nice kind of bowl shape. So twice the width. You can go the same depth or just a hair deeper. But digging that hole widthwise in our environment is so important. So many people think, oh, I just need to dig deeper. Well, okay, deeper is good, but roots go this way. In our soils, they go out. They don't go down. So make sure you're digging that hole nice and bowl-shaped, widthwise, loosening up that soil as much as possible. That way the roots can kind of move through that soil. You get roots, deeper rooted, better rooted tree and shrub is a healthier tree and shrub. Your mulch. So you're going to mix that dirt that you take out of that hole. You're going to mix a third mulch with 2/3 of that native soil. Now, if you dig in that hole and you've done nothing but rocks out and you have no soil, you're going to need to supplement that soil, right? Because we're going to have something put back in. And that's usually where they use topsoil. So creating a healthy environment to plant in is hugely important. And there's other things you can use with that. Mulch, I think, is if I was going to pick one thing, it would be amending my soil with the mulch. whatever's left that you don't use in that hole, you take it. Once you get it all planted, you top dress with it. And that does a lot of good things. We'll cover that later. The other thing I would use, Aqua Boost crystals. So this is a polymer that has mycorrhizals in it. Mycorrhizals create colonies that roots want to move into. So you're creating a little environment in that soil that makes the roots want to go out and go, yeah, I want to go there. It also has the polymers that when water hits it, it swells up. And then it just slowly releases that moisture. So you're getting some nice, even moisture around those roots. It's staying a little bit longer. It's not drying out. So this is a really good product, whether you're doing trees, shrubs, lawns, even in container gardening. This is excellent to use, especially in our environment.
Repeat the word because you don't have a microphone. It's hard to understand your
Sorry.
And I don't know about the
Okay. Aqua Boost. Yeah. So it's a polymer. So that you're mixing in with your soil. And you use it at recommended rates, because if you use it anymore, it's not good. It's not a more is better product. The other product I really like is our Root and Grow. So this is an organic product. It's for when you first plant, or if you have plants that are kind of looking stressed out, this is an excellent product to use. It looks funky. It smells funky, but it is excellent. So I use it when I first plant, and I use it every 2 weeks until I start to see some new growth come out. And once I start seeing new growth, I can go, okay, it's doing good. But if it starts looking stressed or it's gone through a stress thing, start hitting it with your Root and Grow again. Because a healthy tree repels disease and it repels insects. So these planting properly here is huge. I guess that's why I'm spending time on it, because if we plant improperly or we put the wrong trees in, trees and shrubs that are stressed out, they emit pheromones that say, come get me, to insects. You're basically screaming, come take me out, I'm not happy. So if we can keep them healthy and happy, they're actually going to resist disease. Is it humid?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we need some fans in here. They're going to resist the disease and stuff in there. So any questions so far? We're good. Okay. So I'm going to check my notes. Okay, so proper planting. Then here's the boogaboo. That's the boogaboo for everybody. Proper watering.
Yes.
So I don't know if I printed off enough, but I'll try to get more printed off after class if we need more. So this is a paper called Turn on the Waterworks. We had a gal years ago that worked for us. She was so smart, and so she just was a wealth of knowledge. Her name was Patty Conrad, and I just loved her. She always wore really big hats. She always wore a dress with petticoats under it. And I'm like, Patty, aren't you hot? And she's like, no, this keeps me cool. And I'm like, but she put this little paper together called Turn on the Waterworks. So it talks about watering and watering in our area, depending upon the soil types that we have, whether you're watering a tree, shrub, little plant. So I'm going to start passing these around. It's just really good information to keep in your files and have. So watering is just tough here. And I think it's probably something that most people struggle with the most is proper watering. Because it makes a difference if I'm watering this tree or I'm watering this 1 gallon shrub, or I'm watering a 6-pack. Am I going to water them all the same? Or do they all have the same watering requirements? Probably not, because this little 6-pack, he's going to dry out really fast. I'm going to move this because I just realized that I knocked all you guys up. So a little 6-pack is a tiny little root. He's going to need a lot more water than a big tree because he's got a bigger root system. He's going to need it more frequently, I guess I'd say. So he's going to want water much more frequently than a tree or a 1 gallon. Your lawns, they need more water. So when you're watering, I always try to think about that root system that you just planted, or even a mature tree. How much water, how long do you need to water to get that whole root ball wet, right? So if I go out there with my hose on a tree and I go, whoosh, have I gotten the root ball wet? No. Or have I just watered the top of it? Right. You've only watered maybe this much. So all this root down here and out here is going, man, I'm thirsty. I'm really thirsty. So when you water, whether you water with a drip system or whether you water by hand, the thing you have to think about is, did I water long enough to get down to that entire root ball and out in that entire root ball? So a big tree, say it's 15, 20 feet tall, if I only water it on a drip irrigation with a 1-2 gallon emitter for 20 minutes, have I given it enough water? Yeah, because the water only went this far down. But then you go, well, I water it every day, which I get it. You're thinking you're doing good by watering every day, but still every day you water, it's only going this far down. So you're still not getting that entire root ball wet. So it's much better for plants to get a good drink, trees, good big drink, and then go some time in between, because plants need oxygen too. So if I'm just constantly keeping it wet, I'm not letting it take a breath. I'm creating an environment that's very unhealthy. So most people think we're probably too dry to get a lot of fungal issues, fungals and bacterias. But when you water every day, if you're keeping something wet every day and not letting it get a breath, you start to get rot. And you'll rot those roots at the top. And that stresses out a tree. And then you're creating fungal issues, which kind of could show up on the trunks sometimes. It can show up on the leaves. Most of the time it shows up on the leaves first. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not watering enough, because it'll look like create a little brown layer on the leaves. And you're thinking, well, I'm not getting enough water to it. I better water it some more. And you water it more. And you're just making the problem worse, because you're creating that environment where that fungus wants to grow. There's some fungal diseases that look very much like insect. You can't always tell the difference. Bring it in. If you have a tree or a shrub that you're like, I just don't know, these leaves look funky, I think it's insect, but maybe it's not, bring it into us. We have an excellent little microscope that we can put things under. It really helps us see close up what's going on, because there's diseases, fungal diseases like shot hole, which gets into stone fruits and ornamental pear and ornamental plums. That you swear it's an insect creating holes in it, but it's actually a fungus. So you want to get the right prescription, the right need to fix your problem. So bringing in some leaves, and I always say bring it in a baggie, please, so we don't spread it everywhere. We can really help you identify whether you're dealing with a fungus, a bacteria, or an insect. But watering frequently but not deep enough really is an invitation to fungal diseases and bacterial diseases. So it's much better, and the sheet goes through it very, very well. Much better to get good big drinks of water and let some time in between. If it's a tree, established tree, you're watering, it's got a much smaller root system. The thing that bugs me about drip irrigations is you maybe got one system or two systems, and you're running it for everything, right? You got your trees, you got your shrubs, you got your lawn, you got your flowers. So you're running one system you cannot make every plant happy in your yard when you only got one system. So you need to really, and I love irrigation systems, nothing against them, but you got to be aware that you may need to supplement water. Maybe you don't put your trees on the system You just go, you know what, I'm going to go hand water those once a week. Or you go, I'm going to put my trees on the system. I'm going to hand water my little flowers. So you got to make the call. Or you get a really good system that has multiple stations. I'm like, there's a word. Yeah, so you can run one station for your trees. So you're running that maybe 3 or 4 hours once a week. Your shrubs, maybe you're running it, 2 hours once a week. Your perennials, maybe you're watering 30 minutes 3 times a week. But you got to be able to have them different because they all have different needs. Does that make sense? So watering, I know it's the biggest bugaboo. Check your irrigation systems if you have them. So Ken and I went out and did our irrigation check about 3 weeks ago. And because I was like, that sure looks funny. What's wrong with that? We need to do some stuff. So some of our plants weren't even, the emitters were gone or they were plugged. Some of them, there was like a big leak on one part and it was sucking the water away, so it didn't get to the outer edges. So you've got to inspect your drip systems because if you don't, I guarantee you, you have an emitter that's clogged, you have an emitter that's broken off, you've got pipes that have split, that have cracked, the animals have chewed through. So grab a partner and go check your irrigation systems because it's hard to do just by yourself. But we found a lot of issues in our landscape. And this is, we do this all the time. And we found many issues in areas where we're like, oh, well, that's why that died. Because it was sitting kind of in a low area and the emitter had broken off. So when the system ran, it was whoosh, 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 whoosh. So I had a ton of water. It was rotted. So check your irrigation systems. Yep. Regularly. More than just once a season, but definitely at least once a season. When you turn it, if you turn them off for the winter, you turn them back on, definitely check them. Maybe, as your trees get bigger, they need more emitters. The tree that you first put in, you're putting your emitters, put at least 2 emitters per tree, right next to the tree trunk. But if it's been 10 years and those emitters are still right there at the tree trunk, you're not helping your tree at all. You need to move it out where it's going to get the water. So improper watering can cause a lot of issues in your yard, from disease, root rot, bacterials. So you want to get that correct. This sheet is really good. It talks about how far down your water needs to be if you're watering a tree. How far does that water need to go down? Where do I check to see if I'm getting enough water to that tree? So I really recommend you guys read it. I found it to be very helpful. So watering, proper planting, proper plants, and watering all lead to healthy landscapes. Anything on? Yes.
Do those water meters work?
So if question was, do the water meters work? If it's your average little, like we sell a little water meter down here for houseplants, excellent for houseplants. Use it for houseplants. It is wonderful. They are not as helpful outside in the yard. They do not read accurately outside. Yes.
What about potted plants? Do they work on potted plants?
Outside? Yes. I think you can use it in your pot as long as it's not like this huge container. If it's like your normal size container, they're accurate. They do make moisture meters, water meters designed for outdoor use. You can find them online. And yes, they do help. You have to calibrate them. They will do a lot of things. But they can give you an accurate representation. What I like to use is a long screwdriver, piece of rebar, a skewer, anything that I can poke around in that soil. Because our soils can look really dry on top, but you go a couple inches down and they're just gooey wet. Maybe you got really heavy clay. So poking around in that soil in a couple different spots can really tell you what's going on underneath. Because it can look dry but be really wet. So you're causing rot in your roots. But just a simple long screwdriver, a little piece of rebar, can tell you a lot. So if you push it in and you pull it out, it's gooey wet, you could probably go longer between your waterings. If you try to push it down and you get like this far into the soil, what do you need? A lot more water. So just being out there and checking your soils, interacting with your landscapes can teach you a lot. So I'm not a huge fan of the moisture meter outside of the landscapes. Any other questions?
I have a question because our yard we have big plastic laid on it, right?
Yeah.
So now we have big trees with
Mhm.
a hole where you can see the plastics coming up. So I can't see the point of, feeding outside like you're supposed to, where the under the leaves or watering there, right?
Right. So it's her question is about plastic, the landscape plastic. Hopefully, I know some of the older homes still probably have the plastic, but a lot of them have switched to that membrane. It's like a landscape material. It's more of a material,
Okay.
and it's permeable, so
Okay.
the water can go through that. Even your nutrients. So if you're fertilizing, you throw your fertilizer on top and then you water it, it'll move through.
Okay, thank you.
If you have that plastic still in your yard, I would encourage you get it as far back from your trees and shrubs as you can, because that stuff is nasty. It doesn't allow the soil to get air into it. Prevents the natural rains from coming down and saturating the soil. So I'm hoping nobody ever uses that anymore in their yards, because it's just not healthy for anybody. But yeah, the landscape materials are excellent for that. So any other questions?
Okay, so I have a container and the plant and it died. I think it just got too stressed out. But I was going through and kind of breaking up the soil.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because anytime that you can almost smell it sometimes. Yeah. If you dig out a pot, you're like, well, something died in here, and you go to dig it up, and you can smell that. That pot didn't drain well. You've got to have well-drained pots. Sometimes even just lifting them up, putting a wood or a rock underneath them so they get that airflow can make a huge difference. But yeah, you can smell that. Oh, look. Oh, here. That's the first time I've heard of this year. The cicada. I was just thinking about this morning. I was like, I haven't heard the cicadas all season. And yeah, how crazy is that? So yeah, done with watering, all that. All right. Yes, so that's another good question. Your question is, does the plant get fungus, will it survive? Yes. So the fungicide I like, this is called fungicide 5. It is actually an organic fungicide. The reason I like this one is tree, or you can do both. But fungicide 5 is an excellent powdery mildew, rot, black spot, a number of it. It's also a bactericide. So it helps with things that are more bacterial, like fire blight, that kind of stuff, which is actually more bacteria causing. And sometimes we don't know if it's a bacteria or a fungus. I like this because it treats both. So excellent, excellent product. When you're treating for a fungus, the goal is it's not a one and done. So you're going to treat whether you soil drench or spray, and you're going to do it 7 to 10 days later, and you're going to do it one more time. So I like to do 3 applications about a week apart, unless it is just really nasty, bad fungal growth. We want to see new growth emerge and be clean. And we want to make sure that whether it's powdery mildew or blackity wonky until they fall off. But the goal is to keep new growth clean and to keep it from spreading. So you do the 3 treatments. I love fungicide 5. I can use it on fruits and veggies, pretty much anything, and even your indoor house plants will be fine on. Excellent, which is the old timey. Nothing wrong with it. I like copper fungicide, but I like this one better because it covers broader vegetables or edibles. But it works really good for lawns if you start getting the fairy circles in your lawns, things like that. But who has a lawn? Anybody in your lawns? It can really get going and take out. Yeah, mushrooms are not all bad. I mean, Jim, really good. You know, if you've overwatered, now your tree's showing stress, it's got fungus, it's great to use. Yeah.
I've noticed those flying around, and I think they're ones that dry.
Okay, so we got fungus done. Okay, so insects, which the thing with insects, it's almost always tiny, right? So our insect season kind of starts in the spring when things they're about ready to pop, they're budded. You're like, oh, it's spring, it's going to be amazing. And things are in bud, and we get this wonderful little insect called thrip, Thrip, thrip. And it is a little, Ken calls them no-see-ums. They are tiny, and they love to get into certain plants while they're in bud. Roses, pears, some of your other aspens, things like that. That while they're in bud, that little insect works his way into that bud, and they suck, they chew the life out of that leaf, and that leaf opens up, and it's real mottled, real weird shaped. They'll have black around the edges. In your rose buds, your roses look like they're dried on the stem there, black around it. So that is the first insect that tends to come through early in the season. Right? So that's where you got to make a choice. So you can treat systemically. So this is tree and shrub drench. So this you're putting around your plants. The tree or the shrub absorbs it. And so as it leaves out, the chemical, the product, the insect killer moves into the leaves, into the flowers, so that any insect that want to feed on it, it's going to kill them off. Some people are like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, that's great. You have to make that choice. This is called tree and shrub drench. It is a systemic insecticide. So it will kill insects that come and feed on your trees and shrubs without you having to spray them. Yes.
How long does that take?
So this moves up about a foot a day. So if you're doing a small shrub, it doesn't take long. If you're doing a pinyon pine, it's going to take a while. Yes.
What is the best time of year to use that?
So I like to use this early on in the season. So about February, before the bugs and because the thrip, when they show up, they show up in hordes. You'll see them kind of flying through. White sheet of paper, or even take your phone and just kind of shake over it, and you'll see all these little specks, and they'll be moving around. And that's when you know you have thrip. So you can spray. This is for It's a good preventative. It doesn't prevent all of it, but it'll keep a lot of things, really, your roses, your iris, your daffodils, your trees that are very susceptible to thrip. It'll really knock down the issues you have with them.
Bark beetle.
Bark beetle.
I've saved a bunch of trees. with
Yeah. Yes.
So, typically after you prune, do a dormant oil spray, which would be better if you don't feel like doing both.
I would do the dormant oil. So I forgot to bring a bottle up, but horticultural oil, or dormant oil, is a nice organic product as well. So it's the early product we use to help keep thrip under control. So it's a topical. So you're spraying it, you're getting them while they're out. So it's a topical spray. So this treats from the inside out. Your topicals, you have to, you're getting them, but you're not preventing them. Guess what I'm saying?
Is that the same as neem oil?
Different from neem oil, but same concept. It's a very fine oil that basically you're suffocating eggs, insects early on, so that they're less of a problem.
Does neem oil do the same thing?
It does.
It's good.
Neem oils is good. Horticultural oil is a little more cost. It's a better price. It's not as expensive as the neem oil.
It's just I
but
already
it does
have
the
a bunch.
Oh yeah, then use it. Oh, yeah. But yeah, so knowing your seasons so that the thrip early on, being aware, I'm going to spray horticultural oil, I'm going to use a stem and drench, because they're coming. There's never been a year where they don't come. Some years they're worse, but yes.
These products also used on fruit trees.
So your horticultural oil, your neem oil, all those can be used on fruit trees. This one can be used on specific fruit trees, and they're listed. And I don't want to say because I can't remember off the top of my head. So you can use it on some fruit trees because it won't cross the membrane barrier, and so your fruit will be fine, but not all of it. So you have to be careful. So that's the next thing after aphids or after thrip is aphids. Aphids come in right after the thrip leave. The aphids move in. There again, aphids love certain plants. They love roses. They love the new growth on like photinias. They're just certain things that they really love to go after. And they can be green, they can be yellow, they can be brown, they can be itty bitty tiny, they can fly, they can be big and black. There are so many different aphids. It's insane. But they all do the same thing. They're lighting on your plant, they're sucking the juice out of it, and then that excrement is that real white, clear, sticky. So you got aphids if you're like, looks wet under your trees, or they look like they're glistening, or you got to touch them and they're real sticky. You got aphids. And that's another one. You're going to get thrip. You're going to get aphids. It's just coming. So for aphids, neem oil or triple action is great. This is a nice organic. It's got pyrethrums and neem oil in it. It's excellent for that first line of defense. It'll take out a soft-bodied insect very, very well. So I love using the neem oil, especially on my fruits and veggies. Excellent to use. It works on thrips, aphids, some of your caterpillars. It's great on soft-bodied insects. Good to use. The thing about neem oil is it's actually a miticide and a fungicide as well. So for things like squash, every year, if you've grown a squash, you get powdery mildew, right? They just go hand in hand. So this has a bit of a fungicide in it. It's better at prevention than like, I got a full-blown case of powdery mildew. It's probably not going to be as effective. That's where you go to your fungicide 5. But it's great at kind of preventing it. So using it right away. Also really good on spider mite. So we're kind of in spider mite season right now. So spider mites are little, they're not your big spider. You almost can't see them And they can really do a lot of damage before you even realize it. They love like junipers. They like roses. Spider mites love roses. So certain plants that they really love. So if you're looking at your plant and you're like, why is it so discolored or weird looking? If you're looking at a juniper and you're seeing this real fine webbing over it, there's like little tiny spots in it, you got spider mite. So, and spider mites can do a lot of damage in a really short period of time. So you want to be aware and keep an eye out for it. There again, if you think you got a problem, bring a leaf or two in a baggie, because I can put it under that microscope and you'll see little things crawling all around. You're like, oh my gosh, because you really can't see them that well with the naked eye, but you put it in a microscope and you can see them. They're just crawling all around doing their thing. So you definitely want to get them treated before they do too much damage.
Can you use that spray?
Yes. Yeah. So this is spray. You can put it in. You can do it in a hose-in sprayer. So if you're doing bigger trees, that type of thing, this gets you up to a 30-foot spray. So great for those trees. If you're doing just little plants, you can do a little trigger sprayer, a little pump sprayer. You definitely want to get it treated. It's not something you want to ignore, spider mites, because they can do, I've seen them wipe out entire juniper trees and that type of thing. So be aware of it. They like to set up when it's dry and dusty. So the other thing you can do is when we have, it's just been really dry and it's hot, you can go down and hose down your trees because that's where they set up their housekeeping when it's dry and it's dusty. So if you create a hostile environment for them that's wet and moist and clean, they're going to go, yeah, I'll go to the neighbor's house and set up there. So just hosing down your trees and shrubs periodically actually can make a huge difference in June and help keep your insects down as well. So we've covered thrip, aphids, spider mites, and then there's the whole other beetles, the grubs. Blister beetles have been really bad. Does anybody have blister beetles at their house? Yeah, so blister beetles are this little gray beetle. It can be striped, it can be spotted, it can be just gray. And they come in and they just are voracious. And they eat like no other. They'll land on a butterfly bush or a shrub, and they'll just have it gone within minutes, and they come in hordes. You don't just have one blister beetle, you have hundreds of blister beetles. And really good products for that. So these two products are great products. They are not organic. But sometimes we have to pull out the big guns, right? Because I love to go organic as much as anybody else, but if I got a blister beetle decimating my shrub, you're going to bet I'm going to take one of these out and use it. So this is permethrin. It's an indoor-outdoor spray. It's great for soft bodies, so your aphids, your thrip, but it's great for beetles, hard grasshoppers, hard-bodied insects. This is very excellent to use on. Also is really good just as a perimeter, uses a perimeter spray around your house. It works excellent for that as well. Indoor, outdoor. I don't know. It's not a very good name. It's an indoor, outdoor, broad use spectricide, and it really is. It's one of those ones I kind of like to keep in my arsenal because if I've tried my neem oil, I've tried some other things, and it's just not working, I will go to this. This is my next step up. And it gets the soft bodies and the hard bodies. Can be used on your veggies. You just have to, it'll tell you, if it's a squash, use X number of days before harvesting. That kind of thing. So you just got to read your label, make sure you're using it correctly. This one, there again, you're mixing up. You do it in a hose-in sprayer, really easy to use. I'm not going to go into a whole lesson on this hose-in sprayer, but this is the best sprayer out there. It is so easy to use. That's what I like it. You don't have to think very hard to use a sprayer. Like I said, it gets you up 30 feet so you can get some of those big trees. So if you want a lesson later, I'll be happy to talk about it. It's a great little sprayer. This one is called Sayonara. It's very similar to the permethrin. It's more of a synthetic product. Can be used on fruits and veggies as well. But this one, you're just hooking on the end of your hose and you're spraying it off the end of your hose. So, and it covers quite a bit. You think, oh, it's just a little bottle, but it covers like 16,000 square feet. So it covers quite a bit. It's good for the aphids, good for the grasshoppers, beetles, things like that. So you can choose either one. I don't have a preference of one over the other. They're both very effective, and usually one treatment and you're done, which is nice because then you're not out there every day trying to kill something. So grubs, yes.
Last from season to season.
So yes, if you don't use the whole bottle, just store it in a garage in a dry kind of. You don't want it in a lot of sunlight, but a dry kind of dark spot. Yeah, most of your products, you can use them from year to year. The neem oil, because it is an oil, you kind of got to really shake it back up, get it emulsified again. But it's fine to use. So we're going to touch on grubs really quick. I know it's hot. You guys are doing so good. So grubs, yes, the beetle lays the larvae. The larvae is in the soil. That's the grub. It's a little white C-shaped, gross-looking thing, and they love to eat the roots off of your plants. I've seen them in containers. I've seen them in the ground. I had a beautiful Calibragoa container, and I was like, oh, I love this plant. It's so pretty. And then one day I walked by, it was leaning like this. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with it? And I barely touched it. It just fell apart because there was no roots. I'm like, and the grubs had eaten all the roots off this pretty little plant. So grubs can do a tremendous amount of damage. So I always tell people, if you have a plant that's looking like peaked out in the yard, you're like, what's wrong with that thing? I know I've watered it. I know I've fertilized it. Go test dig in the soil. Take a little trowel or a shovel. Do 2 or 3 little test holes. If you see 1 or 2, you've got a lot more going on in there, and they are just decimating your trees and your shrubs. So you've got to treat those. If you don't treat it, you're going to lose your plant. So there's a couple ways to treat it. One is, so this is grub-free zone. You do not want to use this in your vegetable gardens, but you can use it around your ornamental trees and shrubs and that kind of stuff. It kills things in the soil. Now, someone's going to say to me, but what about my little earthworms? So you got to choose, right? Do I want to lose my plant, or do I want to? It's a choice. You got to make a choice. Now, there is a product called nematodes. I do not carry it because it is, it's a great product. It actually does work. Order it online because it has a shelf life. It's not a really long shelf life. So it's not one you just want to keep in your arsenal waiting to use it. You buy it when you need it. So nematodes is a beneficial insect that actually you mix in water, you water in those areas, and it burrows itself inside the grub and kills the grub from the inside out. So it is very effective and it does work, but get it when you need it because it does have that shelf life. Yes.
So the product that you just held up, do you trowel that in the soil?
You just sprinkle it on top and then water it in. It's going to move through the soil. It's excellent for grubs, cutworms, those kind of nasty insects that live in the soil that really do cause a lot of damage. Gnats. There's another one I like for gnats. It's called the systemic insect granules. And it works really well for gnats, the soil gnats. It also works for grubs. So this is a once a year treatment for grubs. We do have 2 other products that'll take care of grubs, but they don't last as long. Systemic granules works really well, but it only works for like 8 weeks. And then there's one that you can actually use around your vegetables that there again only lasts about 8 weeks, but it's an excellent product for taking out those grubs, cutworms, things that are hanging out in the soil. The beetles, there's really not much you can do about the beetles. They're just, because they're not eating anything. when they're in that beetle form. So it's not like you can spray something, and they're really hard to take out with an insecticide just because they're so big. But getting the grubs, treating the soil for the grubs is the most effective way.
But you can't see grubs in the ground.
You have to check.
Damage, so I'd like to do it first, so hopefully it's.
That would be in a perfect world. That would work. So I usually tell people, if you've had grubs in the past, check them again because you probably have grubs now. So it's just something you've got to be aware of and check for.
I didn't know I had the, every year I've got massive amount of the 10 line beetles. And I didn't know I had it yet. So yesterday morning, I left on the porch. I got this light and switch it. It turns blue.
Oh, yeah,
Apparently it kills insects.
yeah.
So there was 10 down on the
Oh.
ground dead.
Oh, really?
So, now I know I've got the beetles this year.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, that
Right.
must work.
Yeah, actually, those do work. The lights work very effectively. I know I probably only skimmed the surface, but we're almost at an hour, and I know it's hot. Yes.
How do I get my gardenias to bloom?
Okay. Gardenias to bloom is a fertilizing issue. So with the they need something with high phosphorus in it because the phosphorus is what makes things want to bloom. So this is a granular 0180. So it's just straight phosphorus. It makes things want to bloom. I also have another one to bring up, which is water soluble, called Flower Power, and it's an 84810 or something like that. Great for things that you want to keep blooming. Geraniums, your annual flowers, even your tomatoes, things that you want, peppers, things you want to have bloom so you get the fruits and veggies off of. So yeah, you've got this is excellent for, thank you, Donnie. So this is the Flower Power. This is water soluble. You're mixing it into a watering can. But excellent for things you want to keep blooming.
And that's interchangeable with the superphosphate?
Yeah, this is one I like to put on more for lilacs. Things that bloom early in the spring or bloom later in the season. It's a once a year kind of addition. So things that bloom in the spring, I like to put it on in the fall so that it has time for the plant to pull it up and be ready. So your lilacs, peonies, roses, things like that. This is immediate. Like I really want them to start blooming next week. This is what I use. This is the one for grubs that you can use around fruits and veggies. Works very well. Vegetable and ornamental insect control granules.
Will the flower cover work on African vines?
It will, but I would rather see you use wax.
I use it and it never has worked.
You gotta just really smack it. I would try
More than one time.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I have whatever you sell this season.
Okay.
The last couple of years, even Ken knew that the codling moth traps
Yeah.
weren't available. Do you know anything about
They're
them?
available now.
They are.
Yeah. So codling moth is a whole other world. It's on affects apple trees and pears. If you have questions about that, we can talk because it's like a 15-minute discussion on how you spray and take care of those. So we can talk later if you have questions on that. African violet. I prefer to use the African violet house plant food because she was asking if we would use this. I might be a little leery. Might be a little strong for that.
If you find a couple of snails in your yard, can you use salt?
Salt. You can use salt, or you just step on it. I pick them up and I throw over my neighbor's.
Why do you want not want snails?
They eat like hostas. They'll eat a lot of plants. If you're seeing
My
holes in
granddaughter got
your-
40 out of the leaves.
yeah, they're not necessarily going after roots. They're usually eating foliage.
They're around like that.
They're hanging out where it's cool and shady. Vinca, I don't know if you can do too much damage to a vinca,
I think it looks fine.
but if they're on your hostas, geraniums, things like that, they're eating the foliage.
Get those Phoenix.
Yeah, so the spinifad isn't organic. It's actually really good for snails and slugs. It's a really nice product for that. There's also spinosad soap, another one that's really good for your aphids, thrips, soft-bodied insects.
On the superphosphate, you said lilacs and roses, would you put it on your irises?
Iris, peonies, anything that you get one really big bloom season out of, you wisteria, things like that. You really want to front load to make them bloom. So you guys have been amazing. I know we've covered a lot. If you have questions, talk to me.